One thing you can't deny about Nickelodeon and its creative prime from the mid-80s to the mid-90s is that it was a network that took plenty of risks. I've already talked about what it cost them to air Ren and Stimpy, the bipolar love child of Looney Tunes and Mad Magazine, but more than that, seeking out another potential NickToon with a similar style of classical cartoon gags and off-color humor was questionable. Sure, Ren and Stimpy was a lucrative brand, but given how much hell the show's creator gave them, this new show, their first official addition to the original Nicktoons lineup, could have single-handedly killed the brand if its production was fraught with issues or the ratings were bad. Thankfully, this didn't happen, since what they got in the fall of '93 was to become one of the most respected and acclaimed TV shows of all time, Rocko's Modern Life. Modern is a very appropriate word to use in this show's name, since although it was made over a quarter of a century ago, it's aged like fine wine in a lot of ways. It always has something new to say about American society, how they interact, how much they value consumerism over common sense, and it does that with a wicked sense of humor, a likable cast of characters, and a satirical punch. I should make it clear by now that I like Rocko a lot more than Ren and Stimpy, since both shows were equally boundary pushing, but Rocko was just a lot smarter and funnier. This could be because it was more efficiently produced, with less behind-the-scenes drama. There was still some, but nothing that full-on ruined the show's reputation. Now, I didn't grow up when it was airing from 1993 to 1996. I was born in 2001, and could only grasp the show's impact through how it shaped SpongeBob. It was little more than a footnote in the Square Roots documentary, but so much of SpongeBob's older crew got their start as writers and/or animators on Rocko, including Stephen Hillenburg, Dan Povenmire, Doug Lawrence, Ellen Smart, and Mark O'Hare, and the show's recording booth unlocked the hilarious potential of Tom Kenny and Doug Lawrence as voice actors. But let's forget about SpongeBob for the moment and pretend it's 1993 again. What does Rocko's Modern Life deliver to TV? How has it come to be? This series was the brainchild of Joe Murray, a cartoonist who made his own animation studio in 1981 when he was just 20 years old. A couple indie shorts and MTV bumpers later, he was passionate about a show he started pitching to Nickelodeon called My Dog Zero in 1992. Murray soon changed his mind and pitched another series about a wallaby called Rocko, based on a character in his unpublished comic Travis. Nick changed a few things like Rocko's fur color, but otherwise the zany spirit was kept intact. After getting together a much bigger team with other aspiring cartoonists, Murray's cartoon hit Nickelodeon on September 18th, 1993 and was met with modest ratings. It wasn't a massive hit with audiences or critics right out the gate, I guess since it took a while to get used to after over 2 years of only the 3 other Nicktoons, and the adult jokes being somewhat alienating. But by the show's last couple years, it was much more highly regarded. Unfortunately, by this point Murray himself was distancing himself from the production of Rocko. His wife sadly committed suicide early on, and this left him wary of the fame he was getting. By the 4th and final season, he gave the showrunning duties over to Stephen Hillenburg, and has said if the 5th season was approved, he wouldn't be involved in it at all. Well, the 4th ended up being the last, and Rocko was cancelled on November 24th, 1996. Not the happiest cartoon history, but certainly interesting seeing the sadness behind a children's cartoon. Now for the story of what goes on in the show itself. Essentially, a young wallaby called Rocko and his pet dog Spunky have moved from Australia to O-Town, USA. While the recency of their move is subject to change depending on the plot, it's always implied that Rocko's still getting used to America's bigger, louder, and more stress-inducing environment, helping him adjust as Heifer, a cow raised by wolves, and later Filbert, a geeky turtle with every fear and allergy under the sun. Together they struggle with theaters, flights, jobs, shopping, and a multitude of first-world problems, most of which haven't gone away since the 90s. Though clearly dated by the attitude and aesthetics of the era, the writing and core messages about valuing social life over the system are timeless, especially since the growth of corporations isn't slowing down anytime soon, and we're more connected to each other through social networking than ever. I especially adore how Ed Bighead, the Squidward of the show, the grumpy neighbor, has a stagnant, soul-crushing job at Conglomo, the conglomerate running O-Town, while Rocko has a quaint job of being the cashier at a comic book store. I apologize if I'm getting overly sociological about this show and its characters, but it has legitimately interesting themes that aren't really talked about in depth by TV historians. But how do I feel about all this? Who are these characters and why should I care about them? Starting off with Rocko, our main character, he comes off as timid and introverted most of the time, but put yourself in his shoes. You'd be quite wary living in a world where kitchen appliances can attack you at any moment. As mentioned, he has a pet dog, Spunky, who almost has no brain. He typically serves as a plot device, but a very cute, funny one who's always got an endearing gag to offer the episode. He's not much, but he's one of my favourite characters, and one of my favourite fictional dogs. Another main character is Heifer Wolf, Rocko's fat, dumb best friend, who works for what he is. They manage to not hit the same notes of him being gluttonous or annoying, and always give him new things to do. You can either thank or blame his family of wolves, but only the mother and father ever stood out to me. They're not a bad addition to the show, or his character, but they somehow stick out by not sticking out. Rocko's other good friend is Filbert, a nerdy turtle who's easily sickened, and that both applies to allergies and attitude, because he can sure get one depending on what season you're watching. I personally prefer it when he's a dork. I love those kinds of characters. If I had to pick my favourite character, it'd be Dr. Hutchinson, Filbert's girlfriend and a later addition debuting in the season 1 finale. She's got this endless glee in everything she does, including helping patients whether they want it or not, which balances out the generally harsh, abrasive nature of the show. You know they had fun writing her when she was created because executives wanted there to be a female character with a good hook. Some other fan favourite characters are Mr. and Mrs. Bighead, Rocko's neighbours. Ed is an enjoyably sour foil to pretty much everyone, just caring about his own happiness, and Bev, who hates her husband's demeanour and has the hots for Rocko. It's not every day you get a kids show that throws a middle-aged woman's social struggles into its juggling act. Maybe the episode Leapfrogs has something to do with that. As for characters I'm a bit more divided on or just not keen on, Really Big Man feels more like a prop than a real character since he's very underutilized. But let's be honest, he'd beat Powdered Toast Man in a fight any day of the week. Not a fan of Rocko's boss, Mr. Smitty, who's just an angry, mean boss from start to finish, or Flicko, this fly that gives him trouble. I already get enough of the world crapping on the guy, I don't need regular characters to do the job. There's also this big hippo lady that Rocko occasionally bumps into, getting her mad, which I'm more fine with, she's more of a background character than anything. The Chameleon Brothers are Chameleon Brothers, and own a bunch of jogs and have vaguely Swedish accents, and as far as tertiary characters go, I can tell they're fine when I actually look forward to their appearances. Another duo is Bloaty and Squirmy, a tick and ringworm that live on Spunky and act like an odd couple. Their episodes tend to get pretty insane, and that's part of their charm, and I can see that. Last of all is Ralph Bighead, Joe Murray's author avatar, forced to make a cartoon he's lost interest in years ago, and neglected by his father Ed for his career choice. Not only is he a vital part of the best episode, Wacky Deli, but I think he's a legitimately helpful character for audiences to watch. I can tell the comedy in his struggles took a lot of weight off Murray, and can do the same for aspiring animators who find it hard to balance their work and enjoyment. The census I get with Rocko's cast is that the more prominent they are, the more their true colours show as characters, and that can work in or against their favour. Regardless, the writing on the show is of a very high quality. The show's main genre is satire, and it does a top-notch job of exaggerating and mocking our daily problems. Usually the most famous episodes are the ones where Rocko has to do a chore, and things get nutty from there on out. For me, however, the perfect Rocko's Modern Life joke comes from the Season 2 episode Boob Tubed, where the gang keeps accidentally ordering more and more expensive TV sets through a digital checkout.
Well, go ahead, press OK!
Congratulations! You have just purchased a Hibachi Big Screen TV with IntelliView on-screen programming.
Heifer, I didn't order that. Press it again! Quick!
Congratulations! You have just purchased a Hibachi Entertainment Monopoly with TBX surround sound speakers.
Ah, that's not right! That's not right!
It's got perfect escalation, integration of the characters' extreme feelings, and dirt to throw at the expense of modern living necessities. There are certainly other forms of comedy besides satire, and they all blend together to make the humour here more dense and varied. You also get movie parodies, slapstick violence, and surreal humour. When they're making fun of movies and larger pop culture, they're hardly subtle about it, but they're still fun to be had. The slapstick is either very light and cartoony or borderline gross out, there's no in between, and I think that can be a turn off. But most of the time, the more brutal moments are made to have a point. Now, in terms of surrealism, O-Town in general is a very strange place, but you know you have to check what you've eaten today when the characters start seeing walking, talking food and the like. But this is all child's play compared to the adult humour this show has to offer. There are endless references to sex and porn, and I mean endless literally, because you always end up finding another reference that went over your head the last time you viewed. Season 1 in particular is no stranger to showing naked female bodies, and even sneaks in the word fetish. But as the series went on, you can tell Nick was more strict with censorship, as Season 4 is a much cleaner show. You still have the episode Closet Clown, where Rocko's chased for liking rainbows, but the undertones are very subtle, and there's nothing here that could get serious complaints from parents. I could personally do without Season 1's habit of putting sex jokes in every episode, but it gave the show some flavor and kept me watching one way or another. Animation-wise, Joe Murray's distinctive style of curved lines on straight objects, oval-shaped, different-looking eyes, and vaguely abstract shapes on backgrounds become immediately apparent. I think it all complements the wacky world of O-Town. Imagine you've never seen Rocko's Modern Life. This aesthetic gives off the impression that anything could happen if you watch it. The art in Season 1 can be a little rough at times. There wasn't much thought put into colouring objects and bringing them to life, but 2, 3, and 4 look really nice even today. There are no real animation bumps after that, no character design tweaks, no experiments with digital ink and paint. It all stays simple and reliable. I don't know why Season 4 looks darker though, at least on the DVDs. Was it a creative choice or just changing technology? We may never know since the guy in charge of Season 4 is no longer with us, but I'm getting ahead of myself. How do the seasons stack up against each other? Well, Season 1 is certainly a Season 1, in that it can come off as crude compared to the rest of the show, both literally and figuratively, but there's a lot of soul put into it. It has the sharpest edge, the bluntest jokes, and is most focused on taking Rocko and Heifer to different places and perfecting their characterizations based on their experiences. Season 2 then continues in the same vein, but is far more toned back. A plus is that the jokes feel like they're better throughout and more layered. They also get a new theme song composed by the B-52s, which I think better encapsulates the series' madcap attitude. Then things peak in Season 3, which has the funniest stories, deepest character moments, and most interesting concepts. Now, with Season 4, Joe Murray stepped down as showrunner and handed the reins to the late Steven Hillenburg. Now, my thoughts could be clouded by emotions surrounding his passing and the fact that he created my favorite show, but Season 4 kinda blows. It's not bad, there are plenty of good episodes, but I found it couldn't quite reach the same highs as before, and the characters were starting to get pretty annoying by this point, especially Hef and Phil. Steve and Joe at least knew that this was the right place to end the show, and I respect it for going out while it still had dignity and bite. With all this out of the way, here's the official tier list for Rocko, don't at me, and what you're probably waiting for, the very best episodes of Rocko's Modern Life. Starting off with Rocko's Happy Sack, where he has to race through the supermarket to get a 99% off deal for all his groceries. The concept's neat, the jokes are brutally funny, and the ending's satisfying for both Rocko and the system. Clean Lovin's the episode where Spunky has sex with a mop. I'm telling you, Season 1 was raunchy as hell, but they managed to get a good story out of this that makes you feel for Spunky. It's not every day you can say you were cucked by a psychiatrist. Jetstream milks airports and air travel for all their worth and then some. Heifer being afraid of flying is a nice touch, as are all the annoyances with the baggage. Then into Heck and back, Heifer goes to Heck after choking on fried chicken and meets Peaches the Devil. Despite all the censorship, it still manages to be the show's most screwed up episode, both visually and in subject matter, and I adore it. Rinse and Spit, the Season 1 finale, introduces Dr. Hutchinson as Philbert's dental teacher, and it seems she does her job well as Philbert can successfully tame a giant tooth that grew out of Rocko's mouth. It's one of those what's going on type of episodes. Tickled Pinky can also qualify as that. The first half is a very bitter look into hospital conditions, and the second is Rocko coming to terms with losing his appendix. It gets rather emotional as it goes on, so I'd say the episode balances out to bittersweet. Hopping on over to The Lounge Singer, I like it for mostly the same reasons I like Old Blue Nose from Ren and Stimpy, but I think Philbert's more developed and enjoyable as a smooth singer. Boob Tubed is the aforementioned episode with the checkout joke, but I also appreciate its digs at television addiction. The Arctic adventure into the TV to fetch Heifer's brain is a far-fetched direction to go in, but it works out. Now, Gutterball's wonderful use of Ed Bighead. He's utterly obsessed with bowling due to the bitter memories of losing a valuable game in his youth, and the way that story unfolds always puts a smile on my face. It's that funny. Personally, I also just really like bowling, so it's great to see a character who's furious about it and understand why. Moving on to season 3, Schnitheads is about Heifer joining a cult. Wow, this season got off to an insane start. It being a sausage cult makes it a little more accessible, but besides that, I can't believe they made an episode about such a serious subject as cults this out there and entertaining. Camera shy's a little more lighthearted, very 90s, coming right after Clerks made home videos big, and very silly with the angle of Rocko sleepwalking naked being mistaken for avant-garde filmmaking. Oh, I see London, I see France. Who'da thunk Paris could be crazier than O-Town? Rocko drowns in the city of love as he gets a crush on another wallaby, and Heifer becomes the ire of a perfectly normal tour guide. He seems like a nice guy compared to my experiences. Also, the choky chicken chains popping up left and right is great satire of fast food. City of love my ass, I'm in Auckland and still love this with a passion. But my title of favourite episode still belongs to Wacky Deli, where Ralph Bighead's forced to make a new cartoon, so he gets Rocko and his fellas to do it for him. Them putting together a dumb story, fighting in an editing room, and the low quality of the cartoon itself are priceless, and so is Ralph's negative reaction to Wacky Deli's popularity. The second half, where he tries to sabotage the show, isn't quite on the same level as the first, but it's still brilliant, especially knowing his beliefs that animation should be art, not mindless bullcrap. The writers on Rocko satirized a lot of things, but they knew how to satirize themselves inside and out. Following this is the big question and answer, where Philbert and Hutchinson marry. Pretty big change for this sort of Nicktoon. It goes to show how much they love each other and deserve a marriage when Philbert's dedicated enough to spy on her during a high school reunion, and Hutchinson stands up against her mum, who's against interspecies relationships. I think this two-parter and Wacky Deli are like Who Shot Mr. Burns, in that they reached a fundamental peak with what they could do with the show, and there was unfortunately nowhere to go but down after that. We still got great episodes like Zanzibar, the musical episode about spring cleaning, and Rocko beating City Hall. If you watched it, you'd know how catchy the songs are, but don't ask me why it's called Zanzibar. Hef in a Handbasket is a good enough sequel to Heck and Back, with Peaches honestly being a bit funnier here. I think the joke about how they technically can't show the number of the beast in a kid's shows run into the ground, but still, Heifer failing on a game show and loving it is worth it for Peach's misery. Last of all is Magic Meatball, where Ed constantly gets promoted at Tanglomo because he relies on a novelty toy for all his decisions, then he starts to think he's married to it and arguing with it. Must have been the elevation. Anyways, another strange concept that I had a lot of fun seeing told. There are a lot of great episodes that are fun in their own ways, but Rocko was not a perfect show and these episodes weren't really a hoot. I'll start with Trasho Madness. It's the pilot and it sure feels like it. Hardly a bad episode, but with the ugly designs and relentless pacing, you could tell there was room for improvement. Such that Playa Nuenza made, but it has other problems. Sick episodes don't really tickle my fancy, and the little food chunks that torture Rocko back to normal didn't help matters. Now, Power Trip has Philbert being nauseous and nipples of the future, but also Rocko turning into a greedy, mean boss like Mr. Smitty for sitting in a chair and pressing a button. With a show with as few rules like this, character motives can get rusty to say the least. Now, Commuted Sentence makes a few good points about the issues with public transport. Can't enjoy them because the story itself is so unpleasant. Rocko even fails to get his car back from being impounded and loses his job, then has to work a worse job to get the car back. I think subverting happy endings can work, but it didn't here. Cruisin's got a neat concept with the Bermuda Triangle changing everyone's ages on a cruise ship, but it didn't need to be double length. We get more dumb, cranky senior citizen jokes than I'm able to tolerate. Next up, I didn't find Uniform Behavior, where Heifer becomes a security guard and starts abusing his power, to be enjoyable. What is it with power instantly corrupting these characters, and what's with the Shining parody here? As I said, I don't like Flicko, or his debut episode, Day of the Flicko, mainly due to just how low energy it is. Do we really need Rocko sleeping for this long while Flicko retrieves his eye from his nose? Continuing with Bugs, Rocko's Happy Vermin has Ed literally being a murderer, eating flies that have thoughts and feelings. This setup, though portrayed cartoonishly, just can't escape how horrible Ed is and how gross the bugs are, even to Rocko who's trying to help them. Scrubbing Down Under follows a more traditional Rocko formula, with Rocko having a problem, having spinach in his teeth, trying to fix it, then getting confronted by some wacky spirit to solve the problem. The fatal flaw here is that Clean Gene the Hygiene Genie isn't likable at all, since he's far more of a burden to Rocko than even the little food bites. We then kick off season 4 with my least favourite episode, with Friends Like These. Hef and Phil fight a lot more around this time, and this shows just how irritating it got. They both cling themselves to Rocko after he accidentally gets tickets to a wrestling match, and he tells them to piss off on 3 separate occasions, but they keep coming back more desperate and destructive. One thing you should know about me, I don't like characters when they're just meant to be annoying, which is also a problem in pranksters. Here the guys are playing pranks on each other, then, inexplicably, Phil have to take care of Rocko's obnoxious grandma. Gee, I wonder what the twist is. Teed Off isn't as frustrating, but it's just really boring. Ed isn't allowed to beat his boss at golf, but he keeps accidentally doing so, and Heifer's there too, I guess. The jokes are really dry, to the point that you forget aliens were in this one. Now, Seat to Stardom is alright in the first half, with Rocko's butt being the source of media buzz, but the strain it causes on his friendship with Heifer is so forced that it almost comes off as parody. It reminds me of Dumped in terms of its forced pathos, but at least Dumped is a parody of soap operas. Not a good one, but I digress. Finally, Turkey Time serves as the Thanksgiving episode, and the multiple problems like Rocko refusing to eat turkey as food despite never having a problem with chicken, and the turkeys flooding his house for no reason other than so Ed can manipulate O-Town into hating Rocko, make it unfocused. I really hope it's more popular in the United States since I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. And in general, if you like the episodes I don't, that's completely fine. I can only take so much of the madness in this show, but despite my feelings towards the lesser episodes, I'm still confident in calling Rocko's Modern Life one of my favorite shows of all time. Above all else, it's a brilliant and charming window into the struggles we dealt with in the 90s, and today still. People always list their favorite movies and shows from particular decades, but Rocko's got me interested in making lists for shows that best reflect an era. It'll become more clear when Static Cling comes to Netflix in a few weeks, Rocko's big return, where he'll be dealing with iPhones, energy drinks, dubstep, and the internet. A lot has changed since 1996, so I don't know if Static Cling is going to be as fantastic as the show from start to finish, but rest assured, I'll watch it. That fat guy in Coming Attractions might not, but he's a story for another time. Goodbye for now.